Hey everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski are taking a look at the feature race at Colonial Downs on Saturday. Race 10 is the Grade 1 Arlington Million. $1 million on the line for these older horses going a mile and a quarter on that expansive turf course at Colonial Downs. Before we take a look at the 11 runners signed on for this race, do want to remind everybody that Timeform USPPs are now available on DRF.com. Make sure to check out Timeform US, do your handicapping with the pace projector, the Timeform US speed figures, pace figures, all of the features available in Timeform US. Go to drf.com/TFUS101 to learn more about Timeform US. And also watch these videos that Craig and I do, because we do talk about a lot of the features in Timeform US as we go through our handicapping. And Craig, let's throw up the field for this Arlington Million. As I said, 11 runners signed on for this race, and it's pretty wide open. I will just say at the outset of things, as a morning line maker, I don't like to criticize morning lines too much, but this will be one where I won't be surprised if the actual wagering looks quite a bit different from the line that's set up here. And this is not a race that I would personally want to make a morning line for.
I agree with that. This is a very tough race, having filled in for you a couple times. It looked like a head scratcher to me. And when I was first looking at this race, it didn't have the morning line. And I had no idea which way the morning line maker was going to go. So I'm not going to give he or she too hard of a time.
Yeah, I mean, the number 4, Atone, I suppose, is a horse that could take a little bit of money. He has back class, having won the Grade 1 Pegasus World Cup Turf Invitational back in the early part of the year, though it feels like some other horses are coming into this with some better recent form. But whoever does go favored here, it's not going to be too short a price, and it does feel like a wide open race. To get some clues as to how this race might be run, let's check out the Timeform US pace projector. And Craig, I do generally agree with this, that this is a pace that has potential to heat up, but I will say the horse that's shown on the early lead, the number 7 Strong Quality, is really the only confirmed front runner in the field. The number 4, Atone, has shown speed on occasion, but he had his big success coming from just off the pace in the Pegasus World Cup. The 10 and 11 win for the money in Santine. They're also horses that have some tactical speed, but not really front-running type. So I'll be interested to see just how fast this pace is, but I do expect the number 7 to be in front.
I would agree with that. I think he'll be in front. One thing to keep in mind with the pace projector, we don't talk about it a lot, is in these route races, it doesn't come until after a half mile has been run. So by that time, I think Strong Quality will have established himself in front. But I also think the pressure will be coming sooner rather than later in this race. And that's part of why the fast pace is designated, because there are horses with good tactical speed.
And do note, both the number 3 and number 6, Set Piece and Masterpiece, get that Timeform US LP flag, indicating that they're tied for having the highest late pace rating in the field. Something to keep note of if this pace really does heat up on the front end. Let's go through this field, and we'll touch upon all of the runners as we mostly go in post-position order, beginning with the number 1, Strong Tide. And Craig, this is a horse that's going to be trying the mile and a quarter distance here. He's really tried a variety of distances and surfaces throughout his career. It does feel like he's best going a little bit longer than this. He's had some success in the past in that 2-mile Belmont Gold Cup, some marathon races on the dirt that he's done well in. A mile and a quarter on the turf just feels like it could be a little sharp for him.
It does. I mean, I might argue a little bit that his Man of War was the best race that he's run at a 1.3 miles, but this would be a turn back even from that. His speed figures are a little bit light, and he just doesn't seem to be in good form right now.
The number 2 is Never Explain. Let's take a look at his victory 3 back when he won at the Grade 3 Dinner Party Stakes at Pimlico. Also in here is Atone, who was the favorite this, or close to favoritism this day. Atone went off at 5-2, and he came into this stretch setting the pace. He's going to get tired at the end as Never Explain and some others swarm on him at the finish line, and Never Explain just able to get his head in front in what was a blanket finish. Craig, Never Explain has come back and run twice since this race, and while he's lost both the Monmouth Stakes and the Bowling Green, I thought he ran really well in both of those spots.
I do as well. That Dinner Party was a pretty strong race. You mentioned the Tone, who we'll talk about, was a Grade 1 winner. And both of his races since, when he lost to Catnip, who is also in this field, was a very close decision. And I thought he ran in a race where he was against the flow, where Channel Maker won from mostly on the lead that day. So he's in really good form and a major contender.
Yeah, I'll just mention that Bowling Green replay a little difficult to track down, just given the incident on the far turn. But Never Explained did not get a comfortable trip that day. He was 2 to 3 wide most of the way, went 4 wide when he was trying to make his move around the far turn. So I agree, he ran a little better than that third place finish might indicate just on the face of things. The number 4 is Atone, and he's the other one coming out of that dinner party stakes. It was actually the most recent start for him, whereas Never Explained has squeezed in 2 more starts since that race back in the middle of May. And Atone was disappointing that day, Craig, just like he was disappointing too back in the Muniz Memorial at Fairgrounds, where he was sent off as the 4-5 favorite on the heels of that Pegasus World Cup success and just really had nothing to offer. Probably was somewhat against the Fairgrounds turf course back then, but even last time, hard to find an excuse for him. And he's just a horse that felt like he got into really great form for Mike Maker last winter. And I just wonder if he's still able to put forth those same kind of efforts.
It does seem like he's tailed off. He had shown a new dimension when he came from well off the pace, winning that Grade 1 Pegasus Turf World Cup. And he just hasn't been the same since. He hasn't approached those speed figures. And I really didn't find an excuse for him in the dinner party. I don't particularly like him in here. And if he's anywhere near being the morning line favorite, I'll like him even less.
Yeah, and there's absolutely no guarantee that this is a horse that gets better going 1.25 miles. So not one that I would want at any kind of short price in this race. The number 3 is Set Piece. And Craig, Set Piece is a really nice horse who has shown up in some Grade 2 and Grade 3 events for the past couple of seasons, but at Grade 1 level has been sort of elusive for him in the past. And now he's coming into this race trying to stretch out to the 1.25 mile distance, something that he hasn't really done very much in his career. He will be finishing at the end like he always is. He's got a big late kick on him, but he's one that really is dependent on how much pace develops on the front end.
He is, and I do think you have to wonder about the 1.25 mile distance. He's had a lot of success at shorter distances, not so much, hasn't really been given much opportunity at longer. And as you note, every time he's moved up in class, it just seems to be a little bit tough. One could argue this isn't the strongest Grade 1 you're ever going to see. It's not like looking through the PPs, you're going to see a lot of wins in Grade 1 races, but there's still some quality, and you just wonder if there's a lot going against him at a horse who usually gets bet in these type spots.
The number 5 is Rock Emperor, who is another horse in this field that's looking to get back on track. His recent form has arguably been a little bit subpar. I'll just note he's listed at half the price of the other Chad Brown runner on the morning line. I would be shocked if Rock Emperor not a bigger price than the other Chad Brown runner in this race that we'll get to in just a little bit. But he's a horse that if he is a much bigger price in this race, there are some cases to be made for him. He's a horse that can be a little random. He'll show up with a big effort from time to time, seemingly without warning, like he did when he won the Bowling Green back in 2022. The Manhattan last time just didn't go great for him. He didn't get the best trip that day, kind of got sawed off in traffic around the far turn, and then Flavian Pratt basically gave up after that. John Velasco is going to take over the reins this time.
Yeah, I'm really not a big fan of this guy in here. There's a lot of not bad losses, but just non-competitive races in his last 4 since that Bowling Green. He's had a layoff in between. He's been gelded since, and he's had really strong paces to run into those last 2, as you can see by the red fractions, and just had no kick whatsoever.
The number 6 is Masterpiece, and this is a horse that also has plenty of back class. He is a Grade 2 winner of the Eddie Reed from back in 2022. More recently, he's been picking up some minor awards in a few of his races. They tried to go some marathon distances with him over the winter at Gulfstream, and he ran okay in a few of those spots. Came off a layoff last time from new trainer Richard Dutrow Jr. in an optional claiming race and was beaten by a pretty good horse in Portfolio Company, just sort of ran out of ground that day, but Masterpiece did gallop out strongly and seems like a horse that will be suited by this stretch out to 1.25 miles.
I'm intrigued by Masterpiece. You don't have to think back very long to see a horse second in the barn of Richard Dutrow from Safi Joseph that ran well. If you saw the Whitney this past weekend, he had very good speed figures last year that would fit in a race like this. There wasn't a lot of pace last time. And as you mentioned, I really liked the way he finished that race in one that didn't have a lot of pace.
The number 7 is Strong Quality, and let's take a look at his last victory when he won two back on the turf at Keeneland, leading in gate-to-wire fashion. This day, got away with some moderate fractions, a very good trip for Strong Quality, but he is able to see out this performance and win by a clear margin. He tried the Grade 1 Manhattan last time, Craig, and I think he just got a little too keyed up in the early stages of that race, because to go a mile and a quarter, you need to relax at some point, and Florent Giroux was intent on getting him to the front end, and it just seemed like Strong Quality ran off on him through that opening half mile of the race. There was also another horse in there for Mike Maker that was supposed to show speed, and that runner went after him, and those two really opened up on the field, and you can kind of see it on Timeform US pace figures for that Manhattan, just unreasonably fast for the mile and a quarter distance. So I don't want to be too hard on him for getting tired at the end, especially facing a good horse like Up to the Mark. Losing to that one by 5 lengths is no disgrace.
No, he didn't run bad at all considering those fractions. As you say, it's pretty odd that he was going so fast. A 164 is obviously flying, and he was 4 lengths in front. Had every right to get tired. He's going to be on the front end most likely here. I just think he's going to need to ration his speed better.
He definitely does need to ration his speed better, but this is a horse that should like these added distances, a mile and a quarter and beyond. He did run one of his best races going a mile and a quarter on the dirt, which takes real stamina. So I like that they're trying some longer distances with him now on the grass. The number 8 is Catnip. Let's take a look at his last race when he was second in the Grade 1 United Nations at Monmouth, going just a little bit farther than this, a mile and 3/8, around 3 turns, and got run down by Therapist on this day. But Catnip put in yet another good effort. This is a horse that has really come to hand during his 4-year-old season for trainer Mike Stidham. 2 back when he won that Monmouth Stakes, kind of got shuffled back around the far turn as some others got keyed up and made premature moves, but he was patiently ridden, swung out, and ran down that field. I like the versatility that this horse has, Craig.
He's good. He's in top form, as you can see, looking at the PPs. Ever since he's been gelded, he's been a new horse, really. And I was really surprised how heavily he was betting at United Nations, but he almost got the job done, and he certainly ran very well. I'm not sure that was a true Grade 1, but I'm not sure this one is either. So he's certainly a contender in this spot.
Yeah, if I was putting on my morning line maker hat, I kind of would have expected Catnip to be the favorite in this race, but it's really tough to peg who the public is going to go for in a race as wide open as this. The number 9 is Adhamo, another horse that I think is going to take a little more money than that 10-1 morning line. He is a horse that was well regarded by the Chad Brown barn last year, running in a series of Grade 1 races and actually winning one. He was the 2022 winner of the United Nations at Monmouth, but really tailed off towards the end of the year, Craig. I mean, he got pace to close into when the Sore Dancer was able to do nothing with that trip, and then disappointing to close out his season in the Turf Classic. He is a horse that I never really loved going a mile and a half, so I do like him cutting back to a mile and a quarter, but this is a tough spot to come back off the layoff for the Grade 1.
It is. If there's a trainer that can do it, it would be Chad Brown. Because we had so many horses, I didn't do a formulator fact, but you can see in the Timeform US PPs, he has very good ratings with horses coming off a long layoffs. I just wonder if this one's actually good enough, particularly given that he's going to need to be ready to roll out off that very long layoff. About 10 months, I guess it is. So, and he's never really run speed figures. He's yet to hit the 120 mark.
The 10 to win for the money, arguably getting the biggest class test of anybody in this field. He'll be stepping up to a graded stakes race for the first time. He ran fine last time, winning an optional claiming race at Colonial, but now moving into much tougher, much deeper waters here. A horse that has run well in both turf starts, but probably needs to do even better to take down a field like this.
Yeah, if I remember right, we may have mentioned this horse on the Pacecast. I can't remember for sure. I know we discussed including him. He's been one that's been perfect since he moved back to the turf. Since he's been gelded, he's been good. His speed figures are moving in the right direction. He's just going to need to take another step forward, but I don't think he's impossible.
And then we'll close out this field with a horse drawn in the widest post position, the number 11, Santine, a horse that is a real enigma in a race full of enigmatic horses, Craig. This one has shown a real affinity for that turf course at Churchill Downs. He was twice a Grade 1 winner on that surface last year in both the Turf Classic and last year's Arlington Million. But this year, the Million's being run at Colonial, and Santine's had trouble transferring that good form to other courses, and they've tried a variety of things with him recently, synthetic and dirt, and he just hasn't been getting back into his best form.
No, and he's a horse who has done his best running up near the front end, which I think could get him in trouble in this spot. He draws the 11 post. I have a feeling he's going to get caught wide. And as you said, most of his best efforts have come at Churchill, and particularly last year when it was that weird Churchill course that they didn't run on very often. It seemed to really favor horses with his running style. So as a horse who's probably going to take money, I'm going to look elsewhere.
Well, let's throw up our picks for this wide open edition of the Arlington Million. And not surprised, Craig, that we're on pretty different pages here because there are a lot of horses you can make cases for in this race. I did give a long look to the horse you have on top, Masterpiece, one that we're hoping that pace heats up on the front end.
Yeah, and the Whitney stuck in my head where I saw it with his hit winner there, second start for Safi Joseph, Way to Barrio. And not just that, I really like what I saw from his return from that layoff at a distance much shorter, which is probably not his best, and just really like the way he finished. And I'm expecting a much better effort this time. And as I noted a few times, I don't think this is the strongest Grade 1 race we're going to see.
I would agree with that. And I think we both agree that the number 2, Never Explain, is arguably the horse to beat in this race. We both have him second in our picks. He just makes a lot of sense. I did go for a bigger price with the number 7, Strong Quality, that horse that showed leading on the pace projector. I'll just clarify. I don't think this is a horse that necessarily needs the lead to be successful, but he has used that running style recently. It does feel like one that's going to go forward in this race, and I thought he ran deceptively well in the Manhattan last time and would be a generous price in this Arlington Million. So the number 6, Masterpiece for Craig, and the number 7, Strong Quality for me in the future race at Colonial Downs on Saturday. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.